What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Stadium Drive, week number 6, here live on Facebook, X, and YouTube with Storied Rivals Sports Media. Will Ford here with you for coverage of a big-time battle here in the LCL Buckeye Division. The Granville Blue Aces on the road, 4-1, taking on 1-4 Watkins Memorial and the Warriors. And really excited to be here with you. Thanks for joining us last week for Dublin Sayetta taking on Worthington-Kilbourne, the Battle of Hard Road. But with this matchup tonight, opening up league play, in the Licking County League Buckeye Division. And Granville, we'll get to them here in a few minutes. I want to start with Watkins Memorial. And if we take a look at the last 10 matchups between these two teams, it has been dominated by Granville. You take a look at the last 10, Granville's won 9 in a row dating back to 2016, and Watkins Memorial's last win was 42-17 in 2015. So it's been a while. It's been a long time coming for the Warriors, and complete dominance, as you can see there, 2016 onwards through 2024, and the Blue Aces won last year in Granville 31-14. So now it's time for Watkins Memorial at home, a super talented offense, to try to get back on the scoreboard here in this rivalry as they've lost the last 9 in a row. Didn't get a chance to connect with head coach Darren Waters of the Warriors. Had some technical issues and we weren't able to kind of sit down and chat. But I know in my heart of hearts, and if you just look on paper, yes, you see the 1-4 record, but this offense is way too talented to be a 1-4 football team. You really look at their schedule, and yes, there's a couple games where they lost by multiple scores, but last week against Johnstown-Monroe, they lost in overtime 43-42, and they were up 2 scores in that game. A couple turnovers don't go their way. They were able to battle back in the fourth quarter, trailing by 7 at 2 different points to force overtime, and a 2-point conversion to win the game. It came up a little bit short. And then obviously in week 1 against Worthington-Kilbourne, they lost that one by 1 score. So really, if you look at it, a couple plays go their way, they could be a 3-2 football team instead of 1-4. And I know that this offense is way too talented to not eventually figure this out and win some games eventually. And I know that last week they played some really good football. And you take a look at their quarterback, Drew Samsal. I mean, he was just absolutely dominant. And Coach Waters was quoted by saying in the Newark Advocate, if you read that article, he was quoted by saying that was the greatest game probably that any quarterback has ever played under him, any performance that he's ever seen. And Drew last week against Johnstown-Monroe in that 43-42 overtime loss, 210 yards rushing. He did have an 82-yard touchdown run, a rushing touchdown, 3 passing touchdowns. And as you heard me say a minute ago, Coach Waters thought that was maybe the best game he's ever seen a quarterback play. And that is probably so. Drew Samsal, an absolute monster. And you compare that with some other guys on the roster that had great games last week. Graham Smith, 18 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also caught a touchdown from Drew. Dylan Kennedy, the leading receiver in the game, he had 5 receptions, 42 receiving yards, and a touchdown. He also had 36 rushing yards as well. This Watkins Memorial offense, it's extremely talented. There's another kid that we will mention here in a few minutes that really headlines this offense, but Watkins, like I said, their offense has been really good, very productive. They're putting up points in bunches. They're getting a lot of yards, and it just hasn't translated to wins. Like I said, a couple plays go their way, a fumble here or there. They might be 3-2 instead of 1-4. But the headliner for this football team is an Ohio State commit, Jaden Ricketts. He had a touchdown last week against Johnstown-Monroe, scored in, I believe, 3 of 5 games this year. And he's committed to Ohio State, standing at 6 foot, 187 pounds, and he's just a speedster, excellent route runner, and is an unbelievable player for this Watkins Memorial offense. And he has had a tremendous career, and he'll need to have another big game here tonight against the Granville Blue Aces, who are 4-1 coming into this game here in Pataskala, and they're doing it off the back of their star running back and linebacker Kyle Kirby, who has over 1,000 total yards to his name already through 5 games, over 900 rushing yards. He has a receiving touchdown, but 15 rushing touchdowns, and he's only carried the football 128 times. It's been a season to remember, and it's only been 5 games for Kirby. So Granville, had a loss a couple weeks ago against Washington Courthouse. They're playing some excellent football. They graduated tons of talent last year, but a lot of players are figuring it out for them. We talked to head coach Heath Hinton about Kirby's dominance, what he means to that locker room, but also getting to play alongside his brother on the defensive side of the ball, Connor Kirby. Both of them play linebacker. And then the development of his quarterback, Jackson McMillan, who's a first-year starter, standout pitcher for the Granville Blue Aces baseball team, as well as an injury update to one of their key players and a freshman receiver who stepped up big last week in their 35-0 win against Utica. So let's talk to head coach Heath Hinton here on Stadium Drive, week number 6. And we're live here on Facebook, X, and YouTube. And here's Coach Hinton. Thanks for being here. Granville Blue Aces football joining us for week number 6 here with Storied Rivals Sports Media. And I appreciate you joining us as always, Coach. It always means a lot to get the chance to sit down and talk to you. And you guys are playing some awesome football. And one guy in particular, we've talked about him, numerous times over the last couple of years, but Kyle Kirby has just been on an absolute tear through, 4 or 5 games. 959 yards, 15 touchdowns on just 128 carries. He's got a receiving touchdown as well. And if you add up his rushing and receiving yards, he's got 1,000 all-purpose yards, total yards through just half of the regular season. And he's also a beast on defense too. He had 4 touchdowns in week 1 and in week 2. Just talk about a guy like that. Not only the contributions as far as on the stat sheet, but what he means to the locker room.
You know what? When one of your better players are your hardest workers, I think that makes a great dynamic in the locker room. And I just think of that this morning too. When you're, I know Urban Meyer said it before, and a lot of other really smart coaches get paid a lot more than high school coaches. I said that before. So when your best guys are your hardest workers, that's what our captains are. And Kyle's one of our captains, been a 2-year guy, and that's what really makes a difference. He kind of sets the tone for that in practice and the weight room and how you watch film. So he does a great job with that. But he's also pushing along those younger guys who try to aspire to be a great leader, a great captain sometime. And so we're getting that from our leadership and leadership council, and also from our 5 captains that we have. And so it's awesome. It's awesome to have him and kind of leading the way.
Yeah, and then it's also great, too, that you kind of get to spell him defensively with his younger brother, Connor, who's a sophomore. So he comes in at linebacker and fills in for him. How cool was that to have little brother, come in, and you get to see both of those guys play together sometimes?
Yeah, Connor's the same. Connor comes in and works really hard. Those guys are, both playing spring tennis and now in summer. So in the springtime they come and lift in the morning during the spring and then they go to practice and stuff after school and go to matches and stuff, and they never missed a beat. Those guys are both hard workers. They like the game of football, and I think they're one of our teams team leaders too. So Connor puts a lot of time, a lot of energy, playing a little bit more offense right now because some injuries and stuff. But he's kind of our utility guy, so he's got to be a really smart football player.
Yeah, and then talk to me about the development of new starting quarterback Jackson McMillan. I mean, he's a junior, outstanding pitcher. He's got all the tools, right? I mean, he's 6'3" and like 200 plus pounds, and so he's got the measurables. But obviously, you don't ask him to throw the ball too much because you've got a guy like Kyle who can shoulder the load offensively. But he threw a couple touchdowns to, I think it was Carter Ryan, who's a freshman receiver last week against Utica. I mean, talk to me about Jackson, also Carter too, a freshman, stepping up, and just some other guys that support Kyle.
Yeah, we so Jackson does a great job for us. He's been our rock back there. He's kind of been he's a quiet leader right now. He steps up. Sometimes with his physical play at quarterback. Sometimes he'll take off and run the ball. I know our kids like it. So he's done a great job. He's put us in good situation to make some throws when we need it, and put us in some good play calls, play situations too. I mean, like in the run game. So Carter Ryan had to step up because Jacob Culver went down a couple weeks ago. Jacob went down in the third play of the courthouse game. So Carter's kind of special. He's a special kid, special football player, good athlete, but has a sense of calmness and competitiveness that you need out of a player. And he was able to. The stage wasn't too bright for him down at courthouse a couple weeks ago. We had to throw him in there just to do some returns that game, and then we made the decision just to play him a little bit more on offense, and he came up well for us the last versus Utica. With 2 touchdowns, couple passes, made a couple catches.
Do you expect to get Jacob back soon over the next couple of weeks? I know he's a big part of your team. We've talked about his leadership and things during the summer. Do you expect to get him back soon?
I know he's healing up well. I don't know if we're getting back this year or not. But I know he is healing up. So that's always our goal and our hope. But we'll see what the doctor said.
Yeah, well, hopefully he does come back because I know he's been a big part of your team for a couple of years. Um, and with that win against Utica last week, you guys won 35-0, and I think the fourth quarter was running clock.
Yeah.
And we've talked before about kind of the injury bug, like Granville's kind of battled that the last couple of years, and you're doing your best to manage that and put guys in positions to be healthy as you enter the stretch run of the season. How important was that, in a week 5 game to have a running clock so you can get some other kids some opportunities, so that way you can kind of preserve some health of other guys?
Yeah, it's always good to get that part of it. It's kind of really good and enjoyable when you see, there's other kids that worked really hard on Monday through Thursday to get some Friday night time. We had a couple, some of our kids made some big plays. We were able to hold them off, and a lot of their starters ended up still in the game. They're late, and we put in a lot of subs at the end, and it was awesome. It's awesome to see those kids out there and celebrate. Our team was really getting into those guys, celebrating a shutout victory and those guys being on the field is just awesome. We had a couple seniors that don't play extremely much. They got to get on the field a bit more, and some juniors and some sophomores that stepped up. So it was awesome. It was awesome for those kids. It's very exciting to watch our team celebrate other people's successes.
Now you're on the road at Watkins Memorial this Friday, and Granville has won 9 games in a row against the Warriors, so a chance to go 10 for the last 10 against this football team. And I feel like they're a team. They sit at 1-4, but their offense I think has just been way too good, and to me on paper it says 1-4, but I think they're a much better than 1-4 football team. They went to overtime last week against Johnstown and almost came out with a win, and maybe outside of a couple turnovers they probably win that football game. But Drew Samsal, their quarterback, had over 200 yards on the ground. He had a rushing score, but
Yeah.
by the way he threw 3 touchdowns as well. And then they have Graham Smith, who had almost 100 yards and 3 touchdowns himself. They've got good receivers. What do you make of the film that you've seen on Watkins? Do they look like a 1-4 football team to you?
You know what? They're really good. They're big up front. Offensively, they have some good skill guys out there. They all can run. I don't think their record, is where they should be. They do a lot of good things. They think they're 1 or 2 plays away from being just flipping that around.
Right.
So I think they're really good, and our team is taking them that way too. And their quarterback's good. A good quarterback play. They got a great wide receiver outside. And like I said, their offensive line, they're big. They're big. They're strong, and they can move people. And defensively, they do a lot of good things too. And they take some good stuff away. They take some stuff away from you that you can't do. So it'll be a fun, interesting game. Our kids are after the courthouse game. They're not taking anybody lightly. And we got to go on the road again, and it's going to be a tough environment over there. It's not very far away. Kind of a local game, and it's our first game. It's first game of the LCL, and hopefully come out with a win.
How did that loss against Courthouse kind of reshape this team and I guess reset the mindset? Because sometimes, I mean, you never want to lose a game, but sometimes after a loss, you do come into practice that following Monday and you just work that extra bit harder. Like, did your team kind of need that, or I guess walk me through how that loss has kind of shaped the last couple weeks.
Well, first of all, nobody likes to lose, right? You
Sure.
don't have to lose in that fashion. You don't have to lose on the road. But, it's a big learning experience for a team that you can say with, kind of inexperienced at the time. We play a lot of kids that, hadn't played the years before, but also now, it was later on in the, in the year, week 4. So a lot of the kids got a lot of experience from it. They tasted a non-successful football night and didn't like it. So hopefully that tasted like that, not having that fun experience of celebrating afterwards and being in a 4-quarter battle where we didn't pull it out, and we kind of got handled down there. We really did. And it was, from a coaching standpoint to a player standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, we had to get better. And last week was a step in the right direction, and this week is another step in that direction to try to finish our next 5 games. Just learning from that.
Well, the Blue Aces start LCL play against Watkins Memorial here in Week 6 this Friday. And Coach, thanks for hopping in here for 10 minutes, 8 a.m. on a Monday. We're talking some football, brother. I love it, and it's great to talk to you. And looking forward to seeing you on Friday. And good luck.
Hey, thank you very much.
Well, Watkins Memorial is going to have their hands full tonight with the Granville Blue Aces, and specifically Kyle Kirby, who has a 969 rushing yards on the season, 15 touchdowns, over 70 receiving yards, I believe 74 receiving yards, and another score. The Warriors are going to have their hands full with him offensively, but we'll go back to some of these key players offensively for Watkins Memorial, because I do think both offenses, although very talented, they're kind of 2 different styles, and one I could argue was more balanced than the other, and that's Watkins Memorial. And we'll take a look at their quarterback again, Drew Samsal, because I do think that he might be the difference tonight. His connection with his receivers might make the difference. He is a dual-threat quarterback. He can run it. He can throw it. Threw it for 3 touchdown passes last week against Johnstown-Monroe. One of those to Jaden Ricketts, another one of those to Dylan Kennedy, and the other to his running back, Graham Smith. But 210 rushing yards, which is just unreal for a quarterback. His longest run was an 82-yard score. He had a rushing touchdown, but the 3 passing touchdowns, and I just think the experience going up against Granville, and obviously Granville's got studs everywhere on offense and on defense, but his experience, versus a guy for Granville like Jackson McMillan, who is just a 1-year starter and only threw it 9 times last week against Utica. Granted, it was a 35-0 win. He wasn't asked to do too much, but when you look at those 2 and who does more for their offense, and obviously Jackson can run it and throw it as well, but Jackson doesn't quite throw it as much as Drew does. And although Jackson does add an element with his legs as well, he's got a big, tall frame, 6'3", over 200 pounds. Drew obviously fills the stat sheet a little bit more, and rushing for over 200 yards, but still able to throw it, for 3 touchdown passes. It's pretty impressive. I do think he is one of the difference makers tonight. He can be in this game. And you look at their lead tailback, Graham Smith, 94 yards rushing last week on nearly 20 carries. He had 3 total touchdowns. Dylan Kennedy had a nice game, 42 receiving yards and a score. But then you take a look at maybe the best player on the football field, Jaden Ricketts, committed to Ohio State, 6 foot, 187-pound speedster, runs excellent routes, and is just an outstanding football player. And I can't wait to watch him here tonight. But when you take a look at Granville and Kyle Kirby, and obviously they're going to be without Jacob Culver, as you heard Coach Hinton mention, for potentially the rest of the season with an injury, and so some guys are going to have to step up. But Kyle Kirby has been shouldering the load offensively. I mentioned, having over 1,000 total yards on the season, but just against Utica last week, he had 264 yards rushing on only 16 carries for a whopping 16.5 yards per carry. Couple scores. His longest run was 77 yards, and that was in that shutout win, running clock in the 4th quarter over Utica. But they're going to need some other guys to step up to keep pace with Watkins Memorial on offense. And one of those guys was a freshman. Carter Ryan had 2 receiving touchdowns last week, and those scores were of 26 and 22 yards. Jackson McMillan, like I said, only threw it 9 times last week because Kyle Kirby was so effective running the football, but he had 92 yards, and both of those passing touchdowns went to Carter. It's really impressive, though, that for Granville, they have a freshman receiver stepping up and taking Jacob's place, and was very dynamic in their win over Utica. And I'm interested to see how much, because all the resources for Watkins Memorial, they're going to be committed to stopping the run and stopping Kyle Kirby. How much, as Granville adjusts, do they have to rely on their junior quarterback, Jackson McMillan? It's going to be really fun to watch, and we can't wait for it. We've got kickoff here in about 40 minutes, so really can't wait. But before we get out of here tonight, again, a shorter show since we didn't get to talk to both coaches, but let's take you through our schedule here, and we'll start, since we're doing a Central Ohio game, we'll start with our schedule in Central and Western Ohio. Beaver Creek is at Centerville, Marysville at Dublin Jerome, the state champs, the Olentangy Liberty Patriots, on the road at Dublin Kaufman. Dublin Scioto lost a heartbreaker last week in the Battle of Hard Road at the buzzer on a 45-yard field goal. They're hosting Westland. Lyndon McKinley at Grandview Heights. Of course, this game here tonight, Watkins Memorial and Granville. On the right side of your screen, we'll go Hamilton Township at Amanda Clear Creek. Hilliard Davidson taking on Olentangy Orange. Jonathan Alder at Tecumseh. Grove City is hosting New Albany. Thomas Worthington at Olentangy. Upper Arlington hosting Hilliard Bradley. And at the bottom of your screen, Westerville Central on the road at Pick North. And we'll wrap it up with our schedule here in East and Northeast Ohio. We'll go back to the left side of your screen. Claymont at Garaway. Garaway lost their first game last week against Girard. Both of those teams were undefeated going into that game, and not a bad loss if you're Garaway at all, and they'll look to get back on track against Claymont. Ridgewood at Tusky Valley. Union Local, 2 big wins in a row. After losing 2 in a row, they're taking on Beaver Local. Sheridan, tell you what, they're playing some excellent football right now. They started 0-2. They've won 3 in a row. They're at Riverview, so looking for 4 wins in a row. Tri-Valley and Maysville will go to battle. Philo is hosting Crooksville. New Lex and Coshocton. West Muskingum and Morgan, and that one is at Morgan in McConnellsville. John Glenn hosting Meadowbrook. Zanesville on the road at Mount Vernon. Worcester at West Holmes, and Talmadge at Highland. So there's your schedule. East and Northeast Ohio, Central and Western Ohio for Storied Rivals Sports Media coverage, Week 6 football. So thanks so much for joining us, and going to have kickoff in a little over a half an hour for Watkins Memorial taking on the Granville Blue Aces. Really appreciate you being here and joining us, and we will see you in week number 7. Want to give a shout out real quick before we go to our friends at maxeffortmuscle.com, the best tasting protein in the game. They are the best. I drink their protein all the time. It's so good, and you need to go check them out yourself, maxeffortmuscle.com. Make sure you follow us on all the socials, Facebook, X, and YouTube for coverage of tonight's game, score updates throughout the night, as well as other games that are on our schedule in our coverage area in Southeast and Central Ohio. And really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much, and take care of